real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Welcome back to Perception Paradox, and today we have a pleasure of diving into dynamic conversation with Chiara, who is a director of Impact the Future, an action tank dedicated to accelerating the adoption of sustainable solutions in cities and transforming urban landscapes for sustainability and innovation. I met Chiara kind of back in the days when I moved to Denmark. It was 2019, I think, or 18, when she was working for TechBBQ, and I was kind of getting around the conference scene. And the moment we met, I'm like, oh, that's a cool girl, like this Italian. She owns it. She's just she knows what she's doing. And I don't know. One thing led to another. We were working together. We stayed in touch. We became friends. And I was always truly inspiring by her creative mind and also very business-oriented personality, who just kept trying things no matter being afraid. She would still go for it. And she was one of those people who was also brave enough to admit when things did not really meet her expectations, or it was not something what she was looking for, and she was brave enough to change. So today's episode is all about actually exploring from her career path, to her way of thinking, and also the way she discovered about ADHD. It's also a funny story about that we maybe gonna dig into. And also her being a mom. So a lot of things to cover for today, and she's a super inspiring personality. And Chiara, welcome to Perception Paradox.
Thank you so much, Shivila. I am blushing through the screen.
Cool, I can see that.
You're so sweet. I remember so clearly the first day that I met you, but visually, I think you were wearing a red jumper, and it's just so unforgettable. You have this incredible presence. You're a little bit louder than the standard, which is something that I immediately pick up on, because I'm yes, I hear this person's voice. She is in the house. And I remember you were applying to join, and I think I was behind my computer, and I was yeah, she's in, she's coming. We'll be working together. And I think we had so much fun because you said so many nice things about me, but I think those, without sounding like a reflection of things, but I think we have so many affinities in terms of our curiosity and searching into different things, and also being quite independent in our choices and in our journeys, and sort of the love of travels and getting out of our comfort zone. Actually, that's something we might want to talk about a little bit later, because I'm starting to understand that there's a lot of people that find comfort in their routine, in their everyday life. I think maybe that's the majority of people. And then there's the people that find comfort in discomfort. And I think that's something you and I very much have in common.
That's so true. Actually, I read something about that today, and one guy who is doing this nomadic travel blog, and he was raising the question about him having those two types of life. One of the lifestyle he's trying to pursue and have is being in one place, having a group of friends, going to the gym every day. And then he has this another side, which is always keep being on the road, changing environments, places. And then there is always this inner conflict. So how do I actually keep myself in a sane position? And that's something I've been experiencing a bit in the last 2 years while on my vagabonding journey, and trying to answer so is it time to settle down, or is it just the way I am? I think it's just the way I am. I'm still okay.
I think yes. And I don't know, something that I've tried to do, I spend so much of my life trying to plan ahead, but so much of my life trying to we had the 5 years plan and the 8 year plan and 10 years plan. Sometimes I still fall into it. But one thing I learned is just, as cliche as it sounds, just be in the present. Just do what makes you happy right now. Your life has been built by the moment in which you're in right now. And obviously keeping in mind what you like, but I feel like trying to think ahead and being like, should I do this? Should I do that? What's best? Like having this like goals for life that are like a little bit ahead of time of myself never eventually brought me happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, okay, are you happy being a nomad right now, Shabila?
Oh, I'm extremely happy. I wouldn't call
There you
myself a
go.
nomad actually. I think I'm a vagabonder, literally, because nomading is, just working remotely. For me, it's more like the way I'm living life. I'm creating experiences and I go together with the work because I just put myself out there to do the work I love, to work with people, to do work with the dance, programming, mentorship, podcasting came to my world and I have really big vision for that. I don't know, maybe it's gonna change in 1 year. For now, I'm finding comfort in discomfort, I think. And I'm
I
not
think
running away from anything. Like, I had some questions. Are you running away from something? I don't have from what to run. I love being with my people. I have my stable time in one place at some point of the year. But for now, I'm just too curious to stay away from the world that is out there where I just keep learning and growing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
I think that's fantastic. And I thought it was so great when I saw you going for the podcast, like when it finally came
Yeah.
out. I was like, yes, this is it. Just, keep going, keep floating, start building things, see where they
Keep
take you.
trying and keep trying, trial and error. There is no perfect time to do things and launch things. You just
100%. Another very hard learned lesson. If it's something you want to do, just do it now. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything about it. I think we're going to talk a little bit about this later on when it
oh
comes to
yeah,
like
yeah.
entrepreneurship, etc., etc. But like again, I spent so much of my life building up the skills to get to something,
Mm-hmm.
um, without realizing that nobody just does things knowing 100% about them. You just get to it and you learn while doing it, basically.
Yeah, that's how real life works. You have to do it. But talking about your skills, so I immediately want to ask you like one question. I decided to do a bit also the formal way of preparation just to go and check your LinkedIn because I know a lot about you and about your journey. And of course, a lot of things I don't know. But what struck me and reminded me that in the last few years, when you started your journey, you have different countries involved, right? Germany, UK, Denmark, Italy, and and more. And then you have different career areas like from cinema to business, tech, investments. Can you draw a bit of a bigger picture for us? How did that happen? Because the way I know you as an activist, a lot into impact, supporting women, building great programs, and being just this very passionate, but also kind of from the first moments, like more like calm Italian, but with a very big drive within yourself. How all those different industries came along and what's
I don't
behind that?
think anybody has ever described me as calm, but I'll take it. I think I'm learning to be. I think I'm trying to be a little bit more present.
But let's say
Um,
you have this image from outside, like you look calm. I saw your fire all the time, but maybe you were suppressing that fire sometimes in the public environments. I'm not sure.
in the professional one, I think in the
Yeah,
professional one,
that's what I was referring. Like
yeah,
professional, you would be like always very representative, with
sorry,
good manners and everything.
in reality, I was just terrified all the time and overwhelmed and burnout. But I'm glad it came through as just like calm and composed. Um, but I'll tell you a little bit about my journey because that's something that like I think at the time while going through it, I was like, what am I doing with my life? I am not building a career. I'm not like, there's nothing regular about this. And it was so different from anything that they taught me I should have done. Little premises. I went to boarding school in England, and obviously you're taught very much that there's one path and there's certain numbers you need to hit and there's certain places you need to go, and so that was very much ingrained in my head. Again, that example of 5, 10 years plan, stick to it, think ahead, da da da. Eventually, yeah, I think I started, my passion was cinema for a very long time and filmmaking, documentary making. I think if you think about my career, it's always trying. I don't know if I've managed really. Actually, now I'm starting to feel like maybe, but always with the intention of doing good. of doing something for people and planet. So my passion for cinema translated into documentaries. I worked for CPH Docs here in Copenhagen. That then landed me a job in Paris at the Pompidou, at the Cinéma du Réel. And then I did some production. And then eventually I was like, like, am I passionate enough about this to do this? Like also a bit of this wrong idea in my head that was like, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Nah. So it was never like, nah, it was always, I think my cinema chapter ended when I started working with people that were truly passionate about it, and not just cinema in itself, and not just like documentary in itself, but like the production of it, the aspects of what it takes to make something really great, visually and narratively and etc. And so I decided to sort of withdraw myself from that. I started studying. I was studying the management of creative business processes, which was not great for me because I already had done a lot of that during my bachelor. So I had a lot of free time, dip my fingers. When I put it like that, it all sounds very superficial. At the time, I was really, really committed to it, and I spent a lot of sweat and tears and passion, like researching and being into all of this different field. I started getting really interested, and during my studies, I came across this company called Girls Are Awesome, where the point was to increase representations of women in media, and I was in charge of building this event called Girls Are Talking, which was fantastic. I think we weren't expecting it, but it was really just like bringing incredible cases of badass women in decision-making positions, CEOs or people basically, doing good, something incredible with their jobs. And people really responded to it. They would just come and talk about their journeys like we're doing right now. And that was fantastic. And I wrote my master thesis about gender-blindness and sort of how people structure themselves when we have women in, how companies get structured from a gender perspective when we have women in leadership positions, and what are the barriers that prevent women from getting leadership positions. So that was another chapter of my life that sort of organically came through during my studies. But at the end of my studies at CBS, I stumbled upon, and I think we're going to discuss this later, but like thinking back, again, full disclosure, I'm a self-diagnosed ADHD person, neurodivergent person who's going through the process of being diagnosed. So I had my first yes, but I think I know quite a bit about this topic. Looking back now, it all makes sense. Like,
Okay.
and then I was at CBS, and then while I was at CBS, I got to be part of this course at DTU, which was hard tech entrepreneurship at DTU. And then I started learning about technology and the power of technology, how we can scale, and I got really excited about that and entrepreneurship, technology, etc., etc. I loved it, and then eventually I landed my first job at TechBBQ as the head of program. So that opened up a whole world for me, and it was really interesting. And I got to meet all this incredible people doing incredible things. I think we pushed ourselves out there and had
I do remember those late nights, some of us staying, having a bit too much on our plates, and it was fun, but I learned so much in that period. We really pushed ourselves to the extremes, I think, at some point, but it was amazing.
But also it was nice because I have to say, looking back, I had so much freedom in doing in running the program, or like I took a lot of freedom, and
Same.
we got to cover so many interesting topics, and we had sex tech on the program. We had
That was quite a novelty back then, I think, in the
it
programs
was
of
a
the conferences.
huge novelty, and I
Yeah.
had this big panel on center stage, and people were like, "What the hell?" We had how do you call it? Synthetic synthesia.
Yeah, I recall that.
Synthetic media on stage
Yes.
at the time. Nobody was talking about that. We did a lot about mental health, which then became a big thing. I think that was really exciting. We had, we were so young, but
We nailed
felt like
it.
we could reach
It was
out to
really good year.
exactly. And that was Tech Barbecue, and it was funny because during my interview with Aunit, he gave me an exercise like to try to build a mock-up program, and then he said to me, he was like, "Well, it's very clear you do know nothing about investments and investors. And I was like, no, I don't. But give me 1 year and I'll get it figured out. Like, give me some time and I'll figure it out. And then obviously when you start working in the startup world, the big thing is always investors and investment. It's the big shiny thing that everybody is talking about, and most difficult people to get in the room, and yada
Yeah.
yada. It's right or wrong, and so eventually I also sort of got more and more interested in that, in the funding side of things, and I think there was a side of me that was also quite shocked coming from the cultural industries, from that background where
Because
everybody.
you were also studying cultural studies more than the
My
kind of,
background is in the creative and culture industry, so
okay,
documentaries, photography, fashion, art, music, you name it.
yeah.
And everyone is out there like trying to get funds, especially at the grassroots, and it's so difficult, right? And for all the reasons, well, it's difficult to compare it to the tech industries, but all of a sudden here I am coming from the culture industries, thrown very quickly into the tech industries, and there is so much money going around. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
am like, what the hell is going on here? And I still believe that, tech is just as important as culture. And now we talk a lot about behavioral change, etc., etc. Like, I still try to bring that into my perspective with everything I do, and definitely at Impact the Future, we keep that very much in mind, but the two needs to be intertwined. So constantly, so how it is that so much is getting invested into finding new solutions and new technology, etc., and so little it's getting invested in what sort of it's running our everyday life and our hearts and sort of that all part as well.
Yeah.
So I started following the financial side of things, and I landed an internship in London for VC fund, which was a very intense experience. But again, so this is how it happened, from culture to tech to investment, learn a lot about how VC work. It was fantastic. It was fantastic. It was a very intense experience where you learn a lot really quickly. I don't think I've ever worked at that level of intensity as I did when I was
By
in London.
intensity, you mean like by the way of working or just never ending hustling or
By the way of
the
working, I
it's
think
never
like
ending hustling, more like you always have what to do and you never stop, basically. Why is that? Is it because of the competition? Is it because of some kind of the tasks, or is it new? It was new area for you, so it
I was
required.
doing like 10 different things at the very same point of time. Like, the amount of workload and pressure, and I guess it was like obviously it comes from competitions. I wasn't high
Of
enough
course.
in the chain of the office to feel that kind of competition, but I think ultimately, yes, of course. Um, but the workload was so intense. The communication was extremely fast, and especially
Wow.
coming from Copenhagen or Paris. Like, when I
Oh.
was working at Paris, I think they didn't even have Wi-Fi. It was something else. Um, but again, it was traditional VC fund, and even though they're doing some great things, I think already in the back of my mind, not it wasn't back of my mind, it was still very much at the front of my mind. There was impact doing good, climate change, climate crisis, biodiversity crisis. I mean, that's a little bit more something that it's being brought up now, but yeah, that was already there, and I think like I could see a lot of things that were very interesting to me, a lot of solutions, technologies that I thought like this is what we need, but it just didn't fit with normal VC models, as we're very well aware of right now. And that obviously that was already sort of like a light bulb in my head as to like, okay, this is how the wheel is spinning. And sometimes it doesn't work for some of those people that need more time for their solutions and their technologies, especially maybe at the time. I think it was agriculture was started coming out, and it wasn't starting to come out. I keep talking about things like, oh yeah, and then this came out, and then this came out. I think I'm too young to say that. I'm making this story very long, but I'm trying to cover too many things. But at the end of the day, COVID hit, my internship ended, came back home, and
Home
then
to
I
Copenhagen or Italy?
came back to Copenhagen very, very quickly. I the moment they said that the offices were going to close, I packed my bag. Within 5 hours, I was from home,
How-
office, get the computer, get to Gatwick. And my friends were like, what is going on? I was literally about to rent a new apartment and got home within 7 hours of the news. And then the next day, they closed the border.
Here we go. Like you. Okay.
But yeah, so that's when Katapult Foundation reached out and they do impact investing. So for the past 3 years of my life, it's all been about impact investing, which has been fantastic. We, yeah, I worked with Katapult and I really have so much respect for what they do, for their research in terms of, finding new ways of investments to good. Now they focus a lot on system change investing, which I think is fantastic. We're all talking about system change at the moment. And they have Katapult Ocean, I think, is it's the most prolific sort of investors in ocean solutions, impact ocean solutions in the world. So it was a really amazing place to be for a very long time, except soon enough, I just couldn't work with investors anymore. It was a research for me. I wanted to know how that worked. I wanted to know how the investment world worked, but I didn't want to work with the financial side of things anymore. That's not
Okay.
my background, and so eventually I quit to pursue different things.
Yeah. But then, okay, so after the catapult, you
I
went
can
to
just
Antler, no? Didn't we go to Antler similar time?
You
Or
interrupt me. I went to, as in, like, please interrupt me when I start talking
oh
about stuff.
yeah.
But I went to Antler after you,
Oh yeah,
actually.
that's true. So I was going a year ago in Singapore and then you went in fall in Copenhagen. I do remember you joining. Yes. So and
And
you are this one of those not many stories that decided to drop out. So why did you decide to go for an accelerator and why, how comes you decide made a decision to drop out?
Again, another long story. I think that's an ADHD thing as well, where you just have to like give a whole back
Overview, all the details, right?
all the details before I can actually get to the point of it. But I quit my job because actually I wanted to go back to the creative industries.
Uh-huh.
I'm one of those people that post-COVID went really into interior design, interior architecture. Both my
Yeah, I
parents are
rec
trained
yeah.
architects. So I was like, I'm just gonna do this. I had some funds for myself to last for at least 8 months. And I'm just gonna study. I got myself a course and I was like, I'm gonna study interior design. And then very soon after, I stumbled upon this TV series, which I urge everyone to watch.
What kind of TV series?
Finally, I have a platform to say it to a lot of people. I'm like, watch this TV series. It's called Extrapolation.
Okay.
It's on Apple, and
It's not an ad, by the way, guys.
it's not an ad, but I need you to watch it.
Okay.
Um,
Extrapolation. What is
yes,
it about?
it has horrible reviews. And even though it has all these incredible actors, got Marilyn Streep in it, Edward Norton, Sienna Miller, like really, really, really fantastic cast, incredibly shot. It's about what's going to happen to our world and our society in 7 years from now, 15 years from now, 20, 30, 50 years from now. I think all
Hmm.
the way up to 2070 or something. And it's so realistic. It's a bit like the Black Mirror meets climate change,
Okay.
but so realistic in the way like soon enough you walk around streets in India and people will have, instead of the coffee and tea stands, they will have like oxygen masks because the pollution is so intense. And that's like an initial thing. And then there is another thing that people think is ridiculous, that they on the reviews they're like, oh, this is ridiculous. And basically Sienna Miller, she works for this company who's picking up DNA from the animals to store it because all the animals are starting to go extinct. And at some point, there is this whale, and she's communicating with the whale because they're using AI to translate what the whale is saying. And so all of a sudden they're communicating and people are like, oh, this is ridiculous. But I'm like, not really. The technology's there. We know that the animals are going extinct. We know that people are already starting to, like the same with seeds, starting like sampling all their DNAs and putting, and then eventually goes on where like the multinational that it's basically monetizing on the banking of the DNA. It's also
Oh my
responsible
God.
for the further extinction of the
Okay.
all these things. There's so many elements in place.
Okay, so this
Very
series led you to again draw back
extreme
from your
climate
interior
anxiety.
design and to go
Ex-
back to impact.
Extreme climate anxieties. That's what it led me to. Every single episode, I would just cry. I would just go to sleep crying, sobbing, um, and again, going back to culture, going back to behavioral change. Like, what does it take for people to care? Obviously, I intrinsically care, but one TV series, a bunch of episodes, and I'm back on track. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
back on like, okay, no, I need to roll up my sleeves. Like, we need to fight this fight. This is not fair. This is not okay. And at the same time, Siso, which is this incredible person
Uh-huh.
whose basically life goal is ecosystem building. I know we're talking about Antler. Sorry, we're still talking about
No, no,
Antler.
but it's fine. Like we moved now into the impact and the series. So okay, so
Yeah, that's
you
why I go into Antler. I wanted to work on a startup about well, definitely impact, but at the time when I left Catapult, I was researching a lot nature-based solutions
mm-hmm.
and carbon markets, regenerative agricultural systems. So I wanted to work on that. And at that point, I can't remember what happened. Future sensing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm jumping. I think I'm probably the worst podcast interviewee ever because
Amazing. Go for it.
I'm jumping from one thing to the other. But another thing that I wanted to talk about is future sensing.
Uh-huh.
When I started having my climate anxieties,
When
and
did that start happening, the climate anxiety?
when I quit my job and I started and I watched this TV series, and then it got really vamped up, like
And
to the
was it
point.
before Antler you watched the series?
It was before. It was before.
Ah, okay.
I think, yeah. At the time, no, it definitely was. At the time, I was so angry and I was in such a fighting mode,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is bullshit. We're not doing enough. Like, we know what's wrong. Let's get to it. We need to talk about it. I did simultaneously, I did incubator about climate adaptation from Dare Disrupt, Leaders of Tomorrow, which
Mm-hmm.
shout out, the most incredible incubator program I've ever seen in my life. And and so I was really aware about all of this, and I was really angry, and I just wanted people to be angrier. And I think I had friends that were like, "Oh, we need to envision the future. We need to be kind to each other. We're gonna get there together, yada yada." And there's this thing called future sensing, or like this exercise that a lot of people in the scene sort of like to do, where you close your eyes, you do a bit of meditation, and then you start envisioning the future. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that simple, but look into it. I was like, this is bullshit. We don't have time for this. But do it long enough. And my vision kept coming to me. And it was this city, like, this utopian city just covered in green,
Mm-hmm.
where like buildings were covered in
Oh, like
green.
Singapore.
Kind of
Singapore,
again.
it kind of feels like that, like a very utopian city. Like
Yeah,
everything is so covered in green, like it's insane.
exactly. And that's what I wanted. And I just
Okay.
couldn't understand why we have all the surface of concrete, and we know the benefit of bringing more nature into cities because of air pollution, noise pollution, mental health, carbon capture, et cetera, et cetera. Why are we not covering our buildings in green? Why are we not covering every surface of our cities in green? And so I went into Antler wanting to do that.
Okay.
Research how to bring more green to our buildings, basically, or more green into our cities. That's how it came about. That's how I got there.
Okay, and how comes you decide to drop out? Because that's quite again, that we're talking about a very non-conventional way of leveraging, I would say, still your career and doing things. Many people are afraid to drop out, and and to pursue something different. Some of us would consider that it's a failure, that you step back and you just, maybe you were afraid to continue, you know, like so many different perceptions on that. So what led you to become a dropout?
Well, I think at this point, I've already quit 3 jobs in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly not afraid of quitting. I mean, at the beginning came with enormous emotional problems because God forbid you quit,
Oh
right?
yeah, I had to learn that the hard way. I remember
That's
shaking.
something.
Yeah,
You remember what?
I remember my first time I decided to quit the dream job. It was literally like the perfect place, dream job. Everyone were like, "Oh my God, I would like to be in your role," and I created a very great environment for myself. But I've realized that I reached the ceilings, and it's not for me to be in that environment anymore. And I thought I'm going to do something more startupish. So I wrote a business plan and decided to move to another country when I get the grant to pursue. But that moment when I had to tell my bosses, who were amazing and they really like saw something in me, they accepted me without being a native English speaker into the role that required a very strong English, and yeah, and I was just like terrified. So I can, but then yeah, later on you learn that it's a mutual communication and mutual collaboration when it comes to the whole work ecosystem and environment. But that was terrifying because we were not taught to quit.
No, very, very much the opposite. If anything, and it's also true, you're privileged, you have a wonderful job. It was the same with me with the foundation. I had an incredible boss. Alison, I really, really loved working with her. She gave me so much trust
Hmm.
and so much flexibility.
Same,
And I
same.
had my baby at the time, and I couldn't imagine being in a better place. And she taught me so much, but it just wasn't the right place for me. It
Yeah,
just wasn't the right job for me, and
anymore.
I had to move on with a heavy heart, but I did it, and I think you just have to like close your eyes, take that step, and again put away all those things that tell you you quit now, the economy now, da da da. Again,
Oh yeah,
we're also in an extremely privileged environment. At least I
that's
am
true.
where I did it, which is Copenhagen. I have this incredible support system, but yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm here. It gives me the freedom to do and be much more the
Hmm.
way I am.
So
Um,
okay, so then so basically, so you had the courage already to quit, and you made the decision that at the end of the day, the
Antler was
building
not
a.
Antler was not for me. I think at the time they were taking initial steps towards going to impact.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it was tricky because my background was already in impact and impact
Mm.
investing. And so I think my network and knowledge was already very extensive
Okay.
on that. So I quickly found myself spending more time with my own network and learning more from that than in the program where the awareness about some of the topics that I was researching was not so great. And then other reasons. And then
Hmm.
in the end I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do this.
Okay.
And also conveniently, simultaneously, we go back to Sissel. She was there trying to uh, having just created this action tank, Impact the Future.
Hmm.
And she can be very persistent, certainly. Like talk
Okay.
about badass entrepreneurs. Doesn't get no for an answer, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I told you, which I think is quite nice, very scary to say a lot for a reason, but I think my whole life I kind of wanted to prepare myself to become an entrepreneur. Both my parents are entrepreneur and like that's the life, that's what I wanted, my own company, my own thing, yada yada.
Hmm.
But everything I did was also in preparation of it. I just wanted to learn more. God forbid I just started something. I needed more knowledge, I needed more experience, and it was always like, I'm not ready yet, more, more, more. And when I went to Antler, I was like, actually, now I know I can do it. Now I've found out the biggest secret of them all is that nobody freaking knows what they're doing. They just get to
Yes.
it and they
Exactly.
make it happen. But when I finally got there, I was like, actually, I don't know if I can just like choose one problem, one product, and then stick to that for the next 5, 7 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Best case scenario. Not, I guess, worst case scenario, probably it fails right away. Best case scenario, as it goes on, it's a huge commitment. It's a huge life commitment. And as you can see, and I think as my career, my work experience can tell you, it's very difficult for me to stick to anything.
But if I can jump in, that's a very interesting reflection you're now saying about Antler and your learnings, because I had a very similar thing. So my dad is an entrepreneur, and my whole life I knew that I'm gonna build stuff and create stuff, but I always wanted to give myself space to try things, because I'm like, I know that I want to do work, to go and work as a waitress, because I know I'm not gonna pursue as my career, but for me it looks so fun, so I really want to do. I've done that. I went to work in a company because I'm never gonna do that. It was it was the best time. And then funny enough, when I said I'm never gonna have time to do that again before my bachelor's, I was working as a waitress. It was so great. And when you say never, life looks back into you and laughs, because I did go back to some bar and waitressing job along the way, while again getting into entrepreneurship and then choosing this discomfort. But what I wanted to say, that I literally was like testing myself, that, oh, I want to learn now from other mistakes and then to do my own mistakes later on, while in the meantime most of my friends were building businesses. And when I went to Antler in Singapore, which was great, I really enjoyed the program and everything. But then I had this one conversation with one guy who's running Startup Global Reports. We knew each other just from LinkedIn, and he was in Singapore. And we were like, oh, let's grab a coffee. Okay, let's grab a coffee. He knew me literally like 20 minutes in the conversation. We started talking, vibing, and sharing our knowledge. And then he looks into me and he's, do you really think that you have that one problem to solve that you are so obsessed with that you will be focused on that for the rest of for the upcoming decade? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And that was just the final clear answer, and the reason why I actually also stepped back from the program and did not continue any further to the last part of raising and finalizing the team and so on, because I've realized I don't have that one obsessive problem to solve right now that would make me dedicate so many years to build the company. So that's quite interesting to hear that you had a similar thing.
100%. And again, I think we're quite alike. And I think one of also your greatest skills, it's being able to surround yourself with a lot of like fun people. Because I remember when you were working at that bar and you were having a blast. Because I've been waitressing as well, and but mine was not that fun. But mainly because I found this cafe where I had like shifts pretty much by myself, or like it was a more serious environment. But I remember you working. You were like, obviously the energy, which is the same energy that you take with you everywhere, was like right there, and the people around you were vibing from it. And so yeah,
that was so much fun. I've never thought that I'm gonna go back work in a bar while being above 25. And but then it was, for me it was very interesting, because when I moved to Denmark, my safe job position that I took, I got rid of my freelancing jobs that I had before moving to Denmark. I had this position for part-time in marketing, very boring one, but it was a safe choice to get some income. And I just wanted to study my master's. Literally, I wanted to be a student for the first time of my life without any side projects. Ended up being very different. That position fell apart. And then I was like, okay, what do I really want to do next? And that's how I actually got back full heart on working with tech events. I always wanted to do that. I always thought like, maybe it's not the right time. I should do something more serious, whatever it was in my perception. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to do it. And from the first moment when I met the right people somehow, because I opened up myself, it was at Tech Festival. I met Robin Wouters from TechEU, and then Ben from Sesames, and so on. And we just had a couple of conversations. They brought me along on some side events, and that's how it all started. And then I've got to TechBBQ, and with an internship, no money, no pay. I'm like, whatever, I'm gonna go work in a bar, but I'm gonna do what I want. And it was a big sacrifice, because I already had my career, I had my kind of stability and comfort that I just decided to sacrifice. And I'm so grateful that I've done that. That bar work was the best.
this idea of a linear career path, right? Is
Yeah,
so thick, and you can have so many incredible experiences by going a little bit back and then a little bit forward, and then,
yeah, yeah.
being flexible like that.
Being flexible, but sometimes again, it depends on our also environment, background, and also how our kind of how much do we need the security, sense of security, need for security, right? Because sometimes maybe the need for security is stronger than the need for that thrill and adventure, and then you consciously choose to be in the safe path. But then there are different ways to play, I guess. But sometimes when you have it burning, you need that final push too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, but like there is a bit of a connection between like traveling solo and quitting your job, and like those few times that I quit my job, I think you're very much on your own all of a sudden. You're part of an ecosystem, but your ecosystem was built around your job,
Yeah.
and your colleagues were sort of your people professionally, and all of a sudden it's just sort of kind of quiet. But that's when I have gotten the most opportunities coming my way. It's really bizarre, and I think this is kind of the same when you go traveling by yourself. It's what it makes it magic is that all of a sudden you take a moment to like center and stand still and being in your own presence, and then all of a sudden sort of the universe starts sending things to you.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's this weird, I don't know.
It
You
is a
go,
law of attraction as well. It sends you what you need to, and it depends with what kind of setting you're going there. But I think it's not only about the traveling; it's also about the environments. Are you coming with this kind of openness to
yeah.
connect, or you're coming already with predefined assumptions? And I'm always sometimes when someone calls me to ask about, okay, what do you think about this and that? I try to be very careful and selective in a way how I communicate, so I don't set a specific opinion on some things because we all should experience unless something is really bad. I
Hmm.
understand, and recommendation and opinion is not the same. It's kind of same
Yeah.
but different. But I
And
guess, yeah.
maybe also when you are in your professional environment, like we were mentioning a little bit before, it's very difficult to be yourself. And so you can only attract to certain things coming your way. The moment you're not, the moment you're free from that, or at least that was always for me,
Ah, okay.
I can start to be sort of, I can start manifesting a lot more because I can talk much more freely about what my actual interests are, what I'm more critical of, or what I'm more interested in. And those conversations then obviously lead to much more genuine connections
Yeah.
or genuine opportunities. So
But
again, as long as the point is, if you can, or if you're not happy with how things are, obviously try to put a little money aside. Try to put yourself in a situation where you can spend some time reflecting or changing on. Yeah, I don't know. Like I kind of want to say that, but at the same time, I also realize that it's just such an incredible small few that can afford to do something like this.
yeah,
Um,
that's true. But
but
do
if
you
you
think, yeah, but you are like now mentioning that you cannot be yourself in the work environment. Do you think it's always true or it's just the wrong environment? I not always actually. In my case, most of the time actually I could be fully myself. There were a couple of places where I could not, and that just through the time of me being involved in that project, it just showed me that that's not the right place for me.
for me, it's been a learning curve. Again, coming out from, I think my high school year were very formative because they were so rigid in terms of like career expectations and whatnot. When I first started working, like the expectations that I put on myself are so high, and the professionalism that I hold myself to, it's so high. And it's been very toxic, actually. It's been toxic in my relationship at work. It hasn't been helpful in any way. If at all, I think that I was busting my ass off. Like I was working so hard. And but also that I think now it's good because I've sort of learned to do that. And maybe it's good because I've learned not to do that. So kind of both, but little by little now, again, first job is what you get, and you go for it. Maybe the second job you're a little bit more selective or something that you've chased a little bit harder. Third job, you're more conscious. Again, I don't know how many people had 4 different jobs that they can say something like this, but um, eventually now I'm in a place again going through this potential and very self-assessed diagnosis of ADHD, learning that I work and function very differently from other people, and I put on myself pressures than other people might not have, very much also because of how differently I work from other people. Um, and funny enough, now I work with 2 people that also have ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of that, and not funny enough, because I'm surrounded by people that have ADHD. I've always surrounded myself with people that have ADHD. Now, I had a huge win the other day for the first time in my life where I was very open about my personal life in my workplace. Because before it was like, whatever's happening to you, it doesn't matter.
Keep
Go
it to
to work,
yourself. Mm-hmm.
keep it to yourself, go to work, get shit done, right? And also maybe I can be a bit shy about this stuff. I think it's weird, like nobody cares, just go to the office and
Mm-hmm.
work. And then I had like a panic attack a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
which is something so personal, and somehow like I still attach shame to it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was like, obviously I was acting weird and I couldn't go to the office because I had to go to have some checkups and da da da. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. And so I wrote to my colleagues and said, I had panic attacks. Like, this is happening to me. I'm obviously triggered by something, stressed by something, just so you know. And I would have never done that before
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, do they care? This is weak. This is not their problem. But I know now that the more real I can be with them, also about what's happening in my personal life, the more understanding they can be about what's going on. Whereas before I would have just gone to the office and be in a really bad mood, and then people pick that pick that up, and maybe I like off put by that or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, like you say, but I'm working really hard on it. Like I had to work really hard on it. This idea of showing up at work in my true self, and it's still a little bit difficult. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great that you're working, and sorry about your panic attack. It's never fun.
Cool
But
as a cucumber. My sister told me this really funny
uh,
thing. Again, talking about women. She told me a couple, like maybe last year, she told me this joke about this woman. She's like, she thought she was wearing her bra too tight her whole life. Turns out she suffered from chronic anxieties. And like, we know so little about this stuff. And the whole time coming up to because it happened throughout 2 days, I had like
yeah.
multiple. And the whole time I was like, I
Wha-
wore my jeans too tight today,
Oh my
literally.
God.
And it's like that's what I thought was happening to me. We know so little about these
Oh
things. And then the next
wow.
day I go to work with a very loose pair of pants, and then I have
And
another.
that's oh sure.
But
That's very important to talk about that, I think. And our society was way too compressed and too closed
our
to really
first,
be open about that. We still are closed about that. And you're not the first person who is sharing about having panic attacks. So really thank you for sharing this in such
yeah,
space.
of
And I
course.
had a couple of other friends who have experienced the really brutal panic attacks with the freezing, with this kind of lasting for a few days because of some triggers. And
Mm.
every single of them told me that the first thing they felt was, I'm ashamed. And that's
Yeah,
really weird that in this society that we still have this kind of, I'm ashamed
yeah.
to feel bad. Yeah. But I'm glad that we are more and more open about that. And
Luckily, I have a neighbor who's also one of my best friends who's studied psychology, and she's really interested in this thing. And I think because again, I thought I wore my jeans too tight, and I thought I was just having like a diaphragm spasm or something like that. And I
Mhm.
gave her my symptoms, and she was like, "No, you're having a panic attack."
Oh my God.
What? Really? So yeah, we know nothing, and somehow I hear that like everyone, like a lot of the people I'm talking about this to, they've had it. They've had a panic attack or something like that. So it's quite weird that we don't talk about it and that we don't know necessarily. Maybe just me, maybe people know. I never know. You
Mm.
didn't know, I didn't know. It's like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, totally. But okay, so since we moved a bit away now from your career, so we're gonna go back about your latest role a bit later. I really want to touch base right now more about the mental health since we already got a bit into the space. ADHD, you've been mentioning a lot when you got self-diagnosed, etc. I remember us having this prep call for the podcast and you telling, from the moment I saw you, I knew that you have it and you're one of us. I'm like, what? Which was quite funny. And our call when you told me like you're getting diagnosed for ADHD and I asked you, are you also trying just to put now a label or something on yourself? Can you
You're
tell
like,
more?
oh yeah, everybody's getting
Everybody
ADHD.
is getting it. Actually,
No,
I do remember.
no, like I'm here to bat that you have it too. Say anything. I was like, it was still very early on in my research, and no, it was an enormous. It's funny because I've always been surrounded with people with ADHD. I don't know why I was like so aware. I was already pretty aware of what ADHD was, but I think it's because so many of the people that I surround myself with have it or are extremely hyperactive or like kind of easy cases. My partner is, my best friend from high school is, my best friend from a couple of years back is like, again, not just people around me, but really like my closest people, which leads to a rather intense lifestyle.
It can be intense.
And I was a hyperactive child. So now I have a kid and it's all coming a little bit back, but I was very problematic for my mom. And I think up until the age of puberty, no kidding, I was an extremely hyperactive. Then things changed, but so never really thought about this, but I knew I had ADD really. Like people tease me about it all the time, how like I can't focus on anything and my mind is going all over the place, and probably as you picked up from this podcast already, I can barely keep on track on one subject. Like my conversations go circles or circles or circles or circles. And so there was a bit of joking about it. I know, so I think I knew I had ADD, but ADD was not a thing, right? There was
Yeah.
ADHD, that's the thing. And it's so funny because I've always idealized ADHD because all the people that I loved in the world and all the people that I thought were the coolest people in the world had ADHD. So for me, it was like, that's cool, and I want to be part of that team. But I'm not because I just have the boring ADD, and nobody gives a shit about ADD. So that's not something to be diagnosed. That's not something that it's out there. So I always kind of put it on the side. I had huge procrastination issues growing up.
Oh, me too, actually. And I've never understood. And only later on, I started connecting the dots.
It was very unhealthy. I had it from high school, and the problem is I'm starting to realize now. Obviously, there was so much shame attached to it, so much shame attached to it. To the point that I realize now that I go to people, and it was such a huge part of my life because every time I would have an essay to write in school, I would disappear for days because I would just be procrastinating. And then because I was procrastinating, I would be too ashamed to go out to do anything. And I think people could perceive that I was hiding out, but they just thought it was just me. Like Chiara is back in a room watching her movies she loves so much or whatever. Chiara is being a bit weird. And then they knew I was always handing in things at the last minute because they knew my stress. I'd be like, oh yeah, I have a essay to hand in tomorrow at 10 p.m. and it's like at 10 a.m. and it's 10 p.m. and I haven't started it yet. And everybody's
So you're
like,
gonna
oh,
skip the whole night writing.
and now that I'm going out and I'm saying people, I'm going through the process of getting diagnosed with ADHD. Like, remember how much anxiety and like depression and insomnia I would get like every time I had an essay, and they'd be like, "Did you?" And I'm like, "How do you not know?" And that's a very problematic thing because also then you start doubting yourself. I was like, did I not? Was that not a big deal for me? Maybe I'm making this up. But it was a huge deal for me. And I remember as day as light. The problem is that I wouldn't share it. People thought it was quirky Chiara doing things last minute and maybe just like watching her movies. Deep inside, I would spend days and days and days hiding in a dark corner, peeled to my computer to watching things to what I now know is like an ADHD freeze.
That's very interesting what you're mentioning about being ashamed for not delivering for yourself and then hiding kind of thing. When you say that, I look back, I also had those episodes, but I could not really connect or understand. And I was like, Why do my best friend, she always gets everything on time? She just could do sit down, like she focuses and do it. And I'm like, as long as I don't have my ass burning and the deadline approaching, I'm not. Back then, I was not able to do it. I did not know how to handle.
Yeah. And then the shame that you attach yourself afterwards when you're like, next time I'm not going to do it again. Next time I'm going to
Oh yeah.
I'm going to plan ahead next time. And then you don't. And then your self-worth just starts dropping because then you're like incapable of doing this thing that other people are doing. And what the hell is wrong with you? You're just being lazy. I think I was labeled a lot as lazy, or I labeled myself a lot as lazy. And that was very...
I labeled myself. But what helped me, I was very busy with extracurricular activities and a lot of sport. So
Yeah.
that really actually helped me. That's what allowed me to keep the discipline and be very like, I was always doing a lot productive, and that's where I would put my energy. So then I could, it was weird for some of my classmates that I would start doing my homeworks at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. when I'm, whatever, 7 p.m. when I'm back after trainings.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what I did. I remember as early as secondary school, so as early as the age of 12, whatever, that I would wake up 5 a.m. For me, it was always 5 a.m. My 5 a.m. wake up call. And when I went to see the doctor for the diagnosis, she was like, "Do you hyperfocus?" And I was like, "No, I don't." Because my partner is diagnosed with ADHD. He hyperfocuses. Like I can see him on his computer, like researching and doing all these things. Like he gets obsessed with something and he cannot not do it. I don't have that. But then she was like, "But how did you go through school and university and work if you had such procrastination?" She was like, "Oh, we'll wake up at 5:30 and do 2 months worth of work in 5 hours." She was like, "Well, that's hyperfocusing." And I was like, "Aha, okay, great." Great to know, and something that we mentioned, and the reason why I sort of eventually come to the diagnosis of it, and something that not many people know, but people are starting to know, is that when you become a mum, that's when most women get diagnosed, because all of a sudden, all of your coping mechanism, like waking up at 5 o'clock because in the morning because you have a deadline, don't work anymore because you're exhausted all the time. At 5 a.m., your baby wakes up. And so this pattern that you've built for yourself for years and years and years, all of a sudden is completely jeopardized. It's out of the window. And all of a sudden I can't do my work anymore, or I don't know when to do it anymore. And it becomes so overwhelming. And then my sort of procrastination or ADHD freeze or brain hold or whatever, however you want to call it, becomes so intense. Like I remember there were moments where I would like physically hurt myself scrolling through Instagram because I couldn't get to do the work because it just becomes so overwhelming. But that's how so many people start finding out all of these little tricks and things and bits and bobs that you had made, mechanisms that you'd built for yourself before. You just don't work when you have someone else that you have to take care of. Again, I chose for myself a career path that is not corporate. I work with people that, well, to begin with, have ADHD themselves, but understand, one of them is a mother, they understand the importance of remote working, flexible working. So I think I set up myself very early on. I don't remember if you remember, but already at TechBBQ, I was pushing to work remotely, and that was really, it was quite frowned upon already. And
Yeah.
that was in 2019, and I was like, this needs to happen. Also because the office environment can be very overwhelming for me. And then people put music or whatever, like I can't concentrate. There's just too much stimuli. And then I'm very social, whatever. I need to be home in my space.
I have a follow-up question for you right now, which is also a very interesting topic for me. I've been recently delivering one of the panels, moderating the panel about neurodivergent talents. And so I have a couple of questions for you regarding that. So to begin with, do you think if you would have been diagnosed more officially with having ADHD and being provided the right tools to navigate through the world the way and understand better your brain function, would have helped you in a way to grow up? Or what's your opinion on that?
It would have helped enormously. Like enormously. Like I go to my dad and I'm like, "Dad, I'm going through the process of getting diagnosed with ADHD." And it's like, "Why?" Like, so you can make excuses for yourself? Like, why? You coped. You're doing just fine. You have a great life. I'm like, sure, I do. I got away with it. I got away with so much. Not everyone is that sort of lucky. but again, talking about what we were talking about before, the pressure that you put on yourself for not being able to do your work because your reward system in your brain works differently than if you work hard, you'll get a good grade, then work harder. Couldn't care less about good grades. I mean, some people then do, and everybody has their own coping mechanisms and their own structures. But it would have helped, and it is helping enormously. This again, I'm self-diagnosed. I have not been diagnosed by a psychiatrist. I'm doing tons of research about it, but just being kinder with yourself. Like there are days where I'm like, I'm about to, I'm about to burn out. It's too much. I'm overstimulated. I just need to take a few hours for myself, even if it's working hours. Go out, have a walk. I don't go into those depression loops anymore because I don't beat myself up for doing things last minute anymore. I just do them last minute. And I somehow everything has managed to work before doing things last minute. Now I still do, but I don't pressure myself about it anymore because then I think that's what would cause my ADHD freeze. And again, I've done many years of therapy before even considering or understanding or starting to conceive that I might have had ADHD. I was already doing many years of therapy and my therapist was fantastic. And I think she helped me a lot at the time, sort of tackling it, even though I didn't know it. I don't think she, to be honest, necessarily knew it. And if she did, she didn't say anything about it. But she was helping me being, like we discussed at the beginning of this conversation, being very kind with myself so that, I might have a deadline, but it's a bit ahead. I don't have that pressure to do it. And in that moment, I want to do something else. There's something else in my mind. Before, I wouldn't have allowed myself to do it because I had that deadline and I could do that. And if I didn't do that, I was procrastinating because my just have to like flick or something, just completely switch itself off. And that's why you procrastinate. Now, and also thanks to the therapist, I've learned to allow myself to do that other thing. And again, I think that's part of also being kind to yourself. Like follow your instincts, follow your curiosity. I'm thinking about 20 different things at the same time at any given point. I have 5 different hobbies at any time at any given point. And the beauty of it, and I think the beauty of the ADHD brain as it goes along, and that was already always one of my strengths as a generalist, right, is that I knew some things about so many things. I had so many feet in so many shoes that it benefits my work, is what makes the way I work worthy for the people that find it sort of worthy. So right now I'm working and obviously I'm working on Impact the Future, but on the side I've decided to study interior design because again that was my passion. That's what I'm.
Finally, why? Finally, you've been talking so much about that, and I'm like, when you talk about that, your eyes light up, and I'm like, come on, Chiara, you have to do it. But we need to. I think the way we function, we have to make a decision within ourselves, no matter what some people are saying. We know best when it's the right time. So I'm glad to hear that.
Right now, I had to be climate. I still want to stick to that. I
Yeah.
still want to feel like I'm contributing to that. I can't give up now, but my passion is still interior. And so I'm learning to use AutoCAD and I'm being taught by
Cool.
architects. And now, obviously, I work and I'm running this festival called Future Living, which is about the future of our cities. And that knowledge about that I gather from architects, that I gather from interior, obviously is
Oh,
fueling my work in different ways. So it again, it's a simple example, but it all comes around. And so the coping mechanism with ADHD, if I would have known before, again, be kinder to yourself, allow yourself to be yourself. I think the people that are most functional with ADHD without the diagnosis are those that haven't been put pressure on performance constantly. And I think, or maybe I'm just saying something a bit ignorant here. I'm not quite sure. I need to investigate a little bit more about that. But yeah, just allow yourself to be yourself.
oh,
How
that's really
difficult and
beautiful.
how hard at the same time.
Yeah, it's simple and hard, I think. And I really like that you're mentioning about acceptance and being more soft. All the,
You'll
well,
hit
I
it
haven't,
always have. You will hit those deadlines. And if you
Yeah.
hit 1 or 2 days later, the world will not collapse. And if you're surrounded yourself by people that will make you feel like the world will freaking collapse if you don't hit your deadlines, find yourself a different environment.
Yeah, you're in the wrong environment. I think so too, because I had a couple of episodes through my life where my world was literally collapsing, and I've never thought, because I'm also quite hypersensitive in a way, what I've got to know in the last couple of
Maybe,
years,
babe.
because it comes together, right? So I didn't even know that such thing exists. And when I started getting into this hypersensitivity, the way the environment affects us, and I'm like, why can I feel like when someone changes the mood, or like you without telling me and entering the room, I can tell you if you're on a good day or you're a bad day, and that really affects in my case me as an individual. And I ended up a couple of times in the wrong environments, and then it just put me down, like with a really like
And people make assumptions about you. That's why, like that was the same with me. It was somebody said it in a very nice way. I think maybe it's a translation to Danish, a way of saying it in English that I don't know exists. But they said you wear your emotions on your sleeves. And so, if you're having a hard time, maybe you're just stressed or upset, you'll come to work and they'll just transpirate from you. And people around it reacts really badly to it because they don't know how to deal with your emotions or how to pick that up.
yeah.
So maybe all you need is a bit of comfort, and instead all you get it's separation and distance, and that makes it even worse. So
Yeah.
that goes back to be very honest with the people. Like if you don't feel like you can be honest with the people you're working with about what's happening with you in your life, change
You're
environment.
working in the wrong environment. Yes, you have to change. And for me, it was more like also, well, back in the days, I didn't know how to cope with emotions. And it was a very toxic environment I thrown myself into. And I should have made the decision earlier to change. But I'm this stubborn person who like, no, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to make it. I'm not going to give up. Well, which is not the case anymore. Now I'm more like kind of, okay, it's not working. Let's park away and continue in different directions. And which is completely normal. No hard feelings, nothing personal. When you're aware about yourself, I think you make good choices. But thanks for sharing a lot about your ADHD journey and in general, how you were working. And I really liked what you were mentioning or touch based on about the work environments, how external stimulus can trigger you and can really like put you into a situation where you cannot focus. That's one of the topics right now I've been discussing a lot and continuing on my tour the conferences somehow about how can we create the environment where everyone can thrive. I don't like to label people. It's just more like kind of someone who has different type of brains can also feel comfortable within the office environment. And I'm not sure if it's still like a talking or actual doing of the corporates, because corporates are taking the lead. What do you think? Is there a way, if the company has the set of rules or some kind of set of educational setup at the offices, would it help for all the different people to thrive in that, or it's just more like about freedom?
I think it's just about free. Obviously, like ideally, the end game is for everybody to be tolerant of everyone, but it's both physical and it's in the way the offices are set up,
Yeah.
but also very much in the way we have expectations of each other. Like before, I would have to sit still during a meeting, and that it's extremely frustrated for me. And so I start building up like tension, and then also can come out verbally and or come out the wrong way. Now I just allow myself to get up during a meeting. I'll just stand up, lean against the wall, move a little bit. I'll try not to make it distracting, and I'll sort of try to keep it quiet, but I don't try to. But I know that I'm an environment that people will not mind. They still understand that I'm there. There's a lot of people that say, like, with ADHD, people, it really helps them to doodle because it helps them to concentrate, actually. So they will concentrate better if they're doodling, but people will think you're distracted. So you need to have an environment, a work environment where people trust that you're doing what is best for you and for the company, that you're there to work because you want to do well. And so that's like one thing that we need to teach, that we need to be more aware of what people need, whether it's sort of fidgeting or getting up or distancing or not or whatever. Again, I just know a little bit about ADHD, but there's so many different types.
I've got this handbook actually from the company that the man is working for, where they identify different types of neurodivergency and what are the symptoms. People who, let's say, have ADHD or other types focus? What kind of things distract them? How can we collaborate? And I think what you're saying, it falls into this all but golden rule. Like, you need to trust people, and the education is the key actually to create those safe environments for everyone to thrive, no matter what.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But also physically, and again flexibly, because I can be in an office where people listen to music. And like
I
for
have
me,
the same. I need silence if I want to do something.
sure, you can take your headphones on. I'll do it. Da da da. It has a cause, whatever. Maybe they'll cover, maybe not. Allow people to just go home and do their work from home if they need to. Don't think. A lot of people think that I'm being very rude because I'll just remove myself and I'll go find a quiet corner somewhere in the office, and they think I'm just being rude or I don't want to be around. No, I just need to isolate myself. I guess that goes back to the other form, which is the more the acceptance kind of form. So yeah, I think educate. We need to have more education about what neurodiversity is, and how be kind to each other.
Yes, and I'm really happy that it's happening actually, and I'm happy that we brought up and spent quite some time now. But I would like right now to bring us back a bit to your latest role with the Impact the Future, right?
Yeah.
As long as I know you, you've been always very passionate about that. You've just shared about your climate anxiety and how you want to change the world. You were trying to find all those different angles. What can we do? Maybe we can do this meetup, gathering, blog, dinners, whatever. And now you ended up there. So what is your vision and what are you guys trying to do? Because yeah, it's interesting.
It's cool. It's cool. Basically, I think it's cool because it's ecosystem building. And I'm doing so much ecosystem building.
Can you define what is an ecosystem for you? Because that's another question I would always get.
I guess
My last role was ecosystem manager and builder, and everyone asks, so what is that ecosystem? What do you mean?
So true. I have never been I've never been asked. I've never really researched what it means for ecosystem building. Instinctively, it's just
but not for everyone.
Work together in order to collaborate, foster collaboration, foster interdisciplinary interaction. There's this word that I love so much that people in my office don't really agree with.
Which word?
Cross-pollination. I love the word
Cross-pollination.
because it comes back to nature. It's like like bees going around, getting a bit of pollen from this flower, a bit of pollen from this flower, and then make beautiful honey. I've never made that metaphor either. It sounds a bit cringy. But cross-pollination, yes, I think that comes from my background in the cultural industries. We need, and again, that sort of weaves into my being generalist and having ADHD. I've always been drawn to learn more about what other people do, being very curious about their work, and then just be like, you need to collaborate with this person doing something very similar. And I think now when we talk about climate, it's so important. And nobody, at least I guess from an investment perspective, is very frustrating because there's no investment in ecosystem building. Everyone is out there saying, we've got the technologies, we've got the knowledge, we have the infrastructures, or we just need to build a bit of the infrastructure. We need to work more together. And I was about to say, luckily, that's not the right word, but right now we're pressured because the climate problem is so complex that people are finally realizing that they simply cannot figure it out by themselves. So, public sector cannot just be like, oh, I'll build that SaaS myself. No, they'll need the academic, deep knowledge about it. They'll need the knowledge on the hard tech of things. They'll need political support. So that's why I think it's so brilliant. It's such an underdog. And yet it's so fundamental. And yet we're all saying it's fundamental. And yet also now I've come to terms, I'm starting to understand how actually difficult it is, obviously, to bring it together, but very much because people are already, they're saying they want to collaborate and maybe they're doing some collaborations, but it's so not fluid. People have their agendas, their calendars, their KPIs, their goals, and in order to collaborate, you have to compromise. And so that comes at such difficulty. It takes so much time. And so unfortunately, I think that's a little bit where we're at the moment. And I do believe it's so important that we start focusing more on it. It's so important that we start talking more to each other across sector. I believe that before, when I was working in the cultural industry, because, I was doing culture, tech, gender studies, everything fits together. And of course, you need specialists and you need people to deep dive in the solution, but it's just as important that we bring them all together. I think academia now is starting to pick up. And working, the polytechnical, it's working with the business school and the technical school and the social sciences and so on. But we need to, basically, as I just said, I've started my job now a couple of months ago. When I was working at the foundation, we were always thinking, like, measuring the touch points between people that we had and then how they would move on and collaborate together and work together, and sort of the outcome of that. Was it positive? Always is. In terms of my new job, I guess the next one is Rethink Cities, which is more of sort of a heavy hitter in terms of businesses and municipalities, and we're going to bring people to Sonneberg. Sonneborg.
Okay. Yeah.
They're wrong. They are incredible there. There's this incredible case of public-private partnership where they came together, the municipality and the foundation, the Danfoss Foundation, the Bitten and Mats Clausen Foundation, and created this project called Project Zero, which is basically a plan to net zero to bring the city to net zero by 2030, and they're achieving their goal.
That's cool.
We're bringing people there and we're showing them how it's done. Public entity from Paris comes and sees that they've built a carbon neutral supermarket. Brilliant. Let's get a carbon neutral supermarket in Paris as well. Like, that's something that we can count tangibly. It's how much of the sort of solutions can be implemented as fast as possible. And that's our goal, right? It's speed, it's urgency. And so how much of what people will have learned at Rethink Cities will be recreated in different cities. I think that we'll be able to measure very quickly.
That's pretty cool. It's kind of clear now about your latest role, and it looks pretty exciting. I really can't wait to follow, actually. And it seems to me like it fits you so well, and the team is very strong, so all the best with that.
Incredible team. Thank you.
Okay, I think we kind of covered all we wanted to cover today for the episode. Do you have anything else that we forgot to mention, or maybe something that was on top of your head that is worth sharing?
I think, if the takeout is having like more people not being afraid of getting sort of out there and trying new things. Maybe the one thing, and that's my bad, that we didn't do is hear more about your perspective, your journey. Because like my case is one thing, but yours is really one that it's gone out there. You're like traveling, you're being nomadic, you're being a vagabond. You mentioned that, but also like I guess we mentioned a bit what some of the fears are that someone needs to tackle, and what are the stigma. But maybe I can ask you a question.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead. It's becoming a tradition. People keep asking me questions on my own podcast. Love it.
Yeah,
but it is a conversation. So,
of course. And so it would be, well, I guess, what's your advice to someone that it's wanting to have a serious change in their life, maybe wanting to quit something important in their life? Like, what's your advice to help them do it, basically?
I think that I've had this conversation actually the other day with one person who is going for a big change. And for me, I don't know, like sitting right now and buying a cheap last minute ticket to Africa for tomorrow, I would say, okay, cool, I'm going. I would just get my backpack and I would go. For some people, even going just to the other city alone or across the border is a big challenge. So I think to begin with, instead of comparing ourselves to someone else, never compare. You want to be your own best version of yourself, and we all have different way we measure risks. The risk awareness is very different from the environment we are coming from and from the lifestyle we're having. So for someone who just wants to make a change, have a vision, a dream. What kind of change do you dream about? Dream big, and then break it into small steps and start small. We sometimes don't make, I think, the change or the action because we try immediately to get to that some kind of end goal, big picture and vision. And a lot of people hold themselves back, including I've been in this situation before as well. I think a good example would be this podcast. Ideally, I have a very big vision for it, from having the whole production team delivering quality videos. But when I started, I did not have the means and tools, and right now not fully as well. So I'm just, instead of procrastinating and holding myself back, I thought that that's the perfect timing. Just go ahead, launch, give it a try, trial and error. I started as a bi-weekly, now it's becoming weekly episodes. I'm introducing the videos, like slowly finding my own way through. So I think that would be...
I think your product is so sharp. I think what you managed to produce is so well produced, like really well
getting
done.
there. So it's like, I'm happy that there are people giving feedback. There is the audience, which is growing every time. And
Okay.
so, yeah, my always like advice is like, if you're not afraid, it means that we are in the comfort, and it's not a bad thing to be in the comfort. That if you want a change, if you want to grow, well, you need to get out of your comfort zone. But getting out of the comfort zone is not only about, it's not quitting a job, it's not moving countries. There are different small steps how you start getting out of it. And the way that I can now, the same moment, move to another country or go on a trip that is very scary and unfamiliar for me, it did not happen overnight. I just build it up over time. And yeah, and that would be, I think, from my point of view, if someone wants to change.
Try a different community, try a different hobby.
Yeah,
Reinvent yourself, give yourself a new persona, the one that you want to become, and like
yeah.
be that person already and see how people like pick it up or what comes your way, Start manifesting.
Manifesting, but also taking actions. Like, I like what you're saying about getting out of your bubble and joining some new communities. And even for someone can be super scary to go alone to a dance class. I don't know. I started doing these things pretty early because my curiosity was bigger than the fear of discomfort. And there were many things. From the first networking events, I would throw myself alone and I would feel like super uncomfortable. What do I do now? What do I ask? How do I meet people? And then going to some kind of dance class alone and just learning to be curious, not learning to be curious, just being open. I was curious since I was a child, being open.
Yeah. But for me, that's almost more scary, going to a dance class by myself
I
and
was
like
scared. Like, I was like, I remember.
leave and go for a different country like this. I would do that like this. Obviously, that's another advice. I think again, join another community, whatever. Sure. When but also more professionally, I remember when I wanted to move from cultural industries to tech, I started going to all these tech events, and I was completely by myself. I didn't know anyone there. None of my friends were really into tech, so I was really going to all of these events by myself. Obviously, so scary
It
because
is.
another thing maybe doesn't come across. I can be really, really shy, but just make yourself seen. Ask a question or go introduce yourself to one person. I mean, Copenhagen, it's easier, it's a small city, but I think you can find niches everywhere. And soon enough, I think if people start seeing you in those conversations enough times, they'll start seeing you as one of their own. Like, there's so many people that I don't know, but because they've seen me to impact related events, they've seen I've committed to that knowledge and I'm curious about that stuff and I want to know people in the environment, they'll just come and say hi to me now because, now we're in the same circle, now it's working. So
Yes.
I just, again, what a cliche thing to say, but just show up.
Just show
Just
up for yourself and for that place you want to be. And I think two more things. Don't limit yourself to the cities and access. I think COVID times what allowed us more to understand that online communities are also super strong, and many
that's what
people.
I don't know about. That's something I don't know. I'm not very an online community person, so
I'm
you
an
have to.
I'm an in-person community person as well, but for me, actually, the online community during COVID time, I wouldn't say like opened up a lot of doors or something, allowed me to create many opportunities for myself because I joined international those hackathon organizations that led me to very interesting interaction with the people. And and that's how I ended up where I am right now because I met people a lot online. And if you look around, there are a lot of educational communities where people gather to study and learn. There are online accelerators, there are online programs, online mentorship, different programs, like so many things you can get yourself involved into. If I wouldn't be like occupied with the things I'm doing, I think, and my aim to spend more time in the present moment without screens, I would be really like out there. But it's not that like that. Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with that. So just show up and put the effort. And if you like, I think one more good maybe idea about the change, like if you're building something or if you want to start building something or if you're looking into some areas, that's what I was doing when I was in Accelerator in Singapore. And one of the products I wanted to build was SaaS app management platform, like kind of an omni-channel where the corporates can have all their at the end of the day, like they're just infrastructure like Jira or something, Confluence, where you can have all the work tools in one place later on, shortly. So I was just reaching out to all the different startups, like from Y Combinator, from other places to talk to founders. Why? Okay, look, you were doing this startup, very similar idea, but it seems like you closed. Why did you close? What's happened? And just find the people who were doing or are doing the things you would like to do or have an interest and talk to them, reach out. As human beings, we meant to share usually.
Interview. I
Yeah.
think some of the best connections I've made also were while researching for my studies, because you go out to people with thought through
Oh, yeah.
questions, trying to really research into something, and I think people really connect to that and relate to that. So oftentimes when someone is looking for a new job or something like that, I just tell them pretending you're doing an interview piece. Like everybody's a blogger these days,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so just say
And a
that.
podcaster and a video maker and an influencer. That's why I didn't want to launch another podcast. And I was stopping myself for 2 years, no joke, because I told when I had this idea to create such platform that
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to create another podcast. And that was stupid me. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a way to communicate. And yeah,
Oh my God, imagine if writers started saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna
look,
create a book."
exactly.
Like,
Like,
what?
that's a very good comparison. Yes.
I'm gonna stop doing that. But the thing is like is like you don't what I'm trying to say is lower the barrier to the belief that you need to have credibility. Like you can just also say, I'm researching to do a podcast. You don't have to do it,
Yeah.
or I'm researching to do a blog. So can I come and interview you for that? And that can give you access to people. I guess it's just like a cheap trick that I think
Ah.
effective.
Whatever works, as long as you're genuine and honest. Epic.
Yeah, really interested.
Yeah. So, final question I asked every guest who
Mm.
is coming to Perception Paradox. What kind of final question you would like to ask the audience and all of us so we can go through the day and ponder on that? Something to think about.
I'm gonna give this a try.
Give it a try.
I'm thinking neurodiversity, I'm thinking empathy, I'm thinking how can we respect each other, communicate with each other. And that leads me to think, instead of yourself, like other people. Like if there's someone that maybe was doing something that you didn't like or thought it was weird or thought it was selfish or whatever, just maybe try to, I'm just thinking out loud here, but try to investigate that trait. Everybody has their thing, whether it's neurological or socially built or, nature, nurture, whatever. Try to investigate into that in terms of like, I've noticed this person withdraws from coming to my birthday every year, and I can't stand them because why are they not showing up? Do they not care about me? Maybe they just have incredible social anxieties that they're not talking to you about. So what I'm saying is, if you see some patterns in people that naturally might sort of offend you or you find difficult to deal with, try to understand what may be like. Try to play a game, try to find a pattern, see what's happening there, and maybe that will help you empathize and just love them a little more.
Cool. Thank you. And where can people follow your journey? What would be the best channel? Is it
Nowhere, I'm not much of
nowhere?
a
Okay.
definitely impact the future. Please
Impact
follow
the future. Okay, cool. That's where we're gonna leave the links.
of our community, ecosystem building, network, reach out. I want to work with everyone. This literally touches all of us, or at least like 70% of the 70% of the population that will be living in cities by 2050. So please follow Impact the Future on Instagram, Impact the Future on LinkedIn. But more than that, please like reach out and talk about and let's talk about how we can make the future of our cities happen.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much, Shavila. I love this podcast, and I think it's so, again, like you might say that there is already a lot of podcasts out there. This is special. It's so special in its own way, and people can feel like so comfortable and like they can be so vulnerable with you, and you're touching all of these topics that are so important. And again, like, this idea of having to choose or narrow down or whatever, it's all very relevant because at the end of the day, I think they all touch each other and they all together, and we all need to hear what you and your interviewees are sharing. So
Oh,
thank you.
that's very
Very
kind of you. So thank you everyone for joining. It was Perception Paradox. Today we had Chiara, and see you next week. Bye.